welcome to this very special edition of the Strive podcast. We're coming to you live from New York City at Commvault SHIFT 2025. And here at Strive, we usually talk a lot about IT, leading edge topics, but we've gotten a chance to do something very unique here at SHIFT 2025, and that's bring in some very exceptional leaders, talking to them about their journey, their overall career in resilience, how they pushed the boundaries through perseverance, community involvement, and they're, of course, fantastic talent. And I'm very, very lucky to be joined by one of those guests today. Gilman Treantos has a 25-year career. We're going to get into it in depth, but he has been the last 17 plus with Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, and he is responsible as chief technologist for their entire data protection and backup and resilience strategy. Gilman, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, of course, we've had a chance to catch up a little, and we didn't talk about, you got a start back in AIX, Phil. So with IBM, we got to talk about that sometime when we got some extra side time. But let's have a chat and take us back about how you started and some of the unique things you did to kind of get where you are today.
Yeah, so my career wasn't a sexy start for sure. I was working at Blockbuster Video in Massachusetts, and a gentleman came in, saw me working on essentially a dumb terminal, and he said, "Hey, you seem pretty skilled with being able to take things apart and put things back together again. I work for a big box wholesale club out in Western Massachusetts. Do you think you might be interested in coming out and interviewing for an entry-level support desk position?" And I had no formal training in IT, didn't really understand what that job would entail, but I said, sure, why not? So I went out, interviewed with the big box club support desk, got the job, and that's pretty much what started my career. I started off as a support level 1 help desk technician, moved up the ranks to level 2, and then was recruited by the mainframe programmer to be a mainframe COBOL programmer. I had no experience in COBOL, but luckily I was able to procure a Learn COBOL in 24 Hours book before my interview, and I was able to cram for that. And then pretty much after that, that was about 5 or 6 years I did that, and I was awful at it. I was an awful coder. No one wanted to be on call when my programs were running on the mainframe, because if it ab-ended, it was going to be an absolute disaster. So after that, I kind of dipped my toe into the distributed systems space. So started off being, as you mentioned previously, an AIX administrator, and then started learning a little bit about storage and backup and recovery. We had TSM at that club at that time, and the gentleman who was mentoring me was about to go on vacation to visit his family in China, and he never came back.
Oh.
Yeah.
One-way journey.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So my manager asked me, hey, I know you've only done this for a few weeks, but AIX, SAN, and TSM are all just 3-letter technologies. That should be easy for you to learn. And I didn't know any better, so I said, sure. So that's
just get the quick book on all 3 of those and you're golden, right?
Right. Yeah. The storage for dummies. And then, so I did that for a little bit, and then I got a call from Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina in February of 2008, and moved there as a TSM administrator, and then just kind of evolved from there.
That pivot from, mainframe, albeit I think you're being a little humble on the programming, them avoiding your particular shift, but that's still a big pivot. Not many, right? I mean, make that mainframe to distributed systems, and then clearly, and we'll get there, then the whole cloud move as well, right? And how that blended. So between those phases, how did you sort of set yourself up to make those leaps? Because not everybody can do that. I mean, we've both seen that, right, in our time.
Yeah, for me, even just starting off at the help desk, my mentality was I wanted to build a brand. I wanted someone who, when they saw my name pop up on the system, that they understood I was going to take their problem and I was going to work it to the very end. Being able to help people fix things, that's really the core driver for me in being in IT. I mean, I'm not saving lives, I'm not rescuing anyone, but at the end of the day, fixing things, helping people, and giving people a sense that their problem is going to be resolved. That's incredibly important to me. So one of the things that I started doing when I first started the help desk job is I wanted to build a brand. I wanted to tackle the things that came into the help desk that nobody else wanted to do. And one of those things was membership. No one wanted to touch the membership system because it was so cumbersome and clunky and annoying. So it was myself and one other support tech, and every time a membership call came in, we grabbed them. And then I guess from there, my name just kind of perpetuated out through the organization as someone who wanted to help, who wanted to fix things. And that's how I landed the interview with the mainframe manager. That's how I landed the interview with the distributed systems manager. My name was out there. Like I said, I was building a brand. I wanted people to know my name and understand, the kind of work quality I delivered.
I remember when we were first chatting, not going to steal any thunder here, and you'll do a much better job, of course, but you had this delicate balance between, hey, I want to be humble, but not too humble, I think you said, paraphrasing, right?
Yes.
So maybe you can go into that, because I think one of the things for folks that are listening who are starting their career and saying, hey, look, that's the initiative I need to find my own way in. I mean, talk a little bit about that, because I really liked when you commented on that.
As I said, it was really important for me to build a brand around my name. And it's easy when you have a name like Gilman, because there's not going to be a ton of people in Outlook with the name Gilman. I'm easy to find. But as you mentioned, some of the things that I've done, at least from a community perspective, is I've gone to high schools and I've mentored other kids. And I've talked to them not specifically about the technology that I do, but just about technology in general. In young people especially, they have that spark of creativity. Like, the two questions they love to ask is how and why. And those are the questions that when I first got into IT that I asked a lot. And I think just kind of bringing people along, for me, it was never about gathering knowledge and then just holding on to it. I really wanted to disseminate that knowledge out to everyone, so that not only did more people understand what it is we do and why we do it, but they're part of the solution. They're part of helping getting things done and getting things up and working again when things go south. I'm not an information hostage taker. I don't believe in that. I think everybody's job is better suited if everybody knows what we're trying to do and we're all on the same page.
And that's such a positive view. I mean, we both probably offline could mention a lot of folks we've seen take very different paths in that, right? Like, if I'm the only one that knows, then this is going to help me. And maybe in a few rare circumstances, but it does not help the greater good, right? It does not pay it forward. So when did the passion come for data protection? Because clearly it is prevalent, and you have made a name, a career, and incredibly good at it. So how did that happen?
So it started off as necessity when Mike left for China and never came back.
That'll do it.
So that was the biggest motivator. I think it kind of goes back to somewhat of a hero complex, like I mentioned at the top, where just being able to help people. I mean, no one ever calls into a support desk, or no one ever calls into an IT organization just to say hello, right? They're calling because they typically have a problem and they need someone to help them solve it. And being on the data protection side, it's incredibly rewarding when you get a call from someone whose server went down, whose data is gone, whose application no longer works, and you're the person that can help bring that back from the dead. It's incredibly rewarding. People are having their worst days typically when they're calling you, and being able to make
turn it around 180.
Absolutely.
Right. So one of the things I noticed, and we talked a little bit about it as well back about a month ago, was not all of the features, capabilities that you may have needed were present. That could have been in TSM, it could have been in Commvault, but you kind of pressed the envelope there. You found ways, right, and augmented those tools. So maybe a little bit about that, because that's that initiative you talked about, but give a couple examples there, because I found that fascinating that you kind of pushed through, right?
Especially with Commvault. Commvault, when we first implemented it, was supposed to just be a replacement for what we had, which was TSM at the time. And TSM with tape-based technology, the AIX server, the DB2 backend, entry point into the backup and recovery team when you had TSM on the shelf was very, very difficult. The learning curve was incredibly steep. We wanted something that was easy. We wanted something that was agile. And we wanted something that had a really good, solid roadmap of what it could do in the future, not only what we needed it to do now. And some of the things that we ended up using Commvault to do are things that we never intended it to do. One of the things we did is we evacuated one of our remote data centers back to our castle in Colombia. There were lots of different technology options that were bandied about, array-based replication, VMware SRM, but all of these were either expensive or there was the potential for some data loss.
Right.
And I spoke to my technical account team because we had talked a little bit beforehand about VMware replication and live mount and live sync and live recovery. And I said, can't we just use Commvault to migrate the data center? And they said, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's precisely what we did. So we removed all of that complexity. We removed all of the high economic cost and burden with moving that data center. And we just did it with Commvault live sync. It was great. We cut over in a single night and no data loss. It was awesome.
So had the capability, but wasn't the highlighted purpose necessarily. But
exactly.
But you were. I remember a lot of folks doing that, but it was clearly a much smaller subset than the primary, use cases. So okay, you got the early days. You help people turn their day 180 around, but then not that threats didn't exist then, but they clearly are not what they are today. Level of pervasiveness and the challenge that it presents itself. So how have you seen that? And your lens, since you've spent so many years doing this, what's your take on where we're headed, how we as a data protection community are running to stop the bad actors, just resilience overall? How do you find that right now, and what can we do more of?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that when I first entered into IT, there was lots of capability of what backup and recovery could do. And I would say that some backup and recovery vendors have not been able to keep pace with the threat landscape. I would have never imagined in 2008 that we would be having serious conversations about cyber attacks, ransomware, things like that. Perhaps they existed, but they weren't nearly as prevalent as they are today. I think really having a solid relationship with your cybersecurity operations team, I think, at least in my perception, there are some organizations that silo infrastructure and cybersecurity operations. That is not a good strategy. These people need to be locking arms, and we need to understand how they deal with anomalous things, what we can do from a technology perspective to alert them that things seem wrong. Because really, at the end of the day, what most IT shops are doing is protecting the perimeter. But once people are in, it's now up to everybody to be able to figure out what is going on, what is anomalous, what is different than what we normally see for behavior for these applications, databases, infrastructure, all these other things. Commvault really is at the forefront, as far as I'm concerned, with being able to look at anomalous behavior. ThreatWise and ThreatScan are also great tools. ThreatScan in particular, because if you think about it, your tools that are detecting malware have already missed the problem, right? So you need something else, that can take a second set of eyes and look at what's going on. Being able to look at data out of band, not necessarily in the production work stream,
right?
Just things like that. I mean, the cyber recovery ready room, the isolated recovery environment. I mean that's going to be a game changer for people who adopt things like that. You need to have that clean space in order to be able to recover your data, find a good place, and then start to bring your business back online.
And test it regularly.
Absolutely. Again, that goes back to the relationship between security operations and your infrastructure teams. Your cybersecurity teams are going to be the customers, the constituents of that isolated recovery environment. But we need to be building that environment for them so that they have a good place to start when something happens.
Could not be a better exclamation point as we come to a close here. If anybody is not writing. I want them to get the pen and the paper out, because what you just said, the relationship between those groups and others, right, clearly
Sure.
legal, is the one gap we continue to find. And thank you for highlighting that, and thank you for, saying how important that is. So that is a key takeaway. All right, in closing, what advice do you have for folks that are starting out on the path? You've already given a few. Anything that you'd like to end on and say, look, if this is the path you're on, these are the things you should do?
Be in the middle of a problem. Don't wait for the problem to end up in your lap. I'm a huge proponent of interacting with other areas of infrastructure outside of storage, server operations, application teams, database teams. Let them know who you are. Let them know what you can do, what services you offer. So if they're planning things like database migrations, in-place upgrades, things like that, that there's a consideration that maybe Commvault and the storage team can help them better facilitate those things more smoothly, less data interruption.
Clinic, thank you so much. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for your involvement in the community. You got a full-time job, got a life, you give so much back, and thank you for your business and your trust in us, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You bet. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this very special edition of Strive. Bye-bye.